Welcome. My name is Karen Welton, and this is Rachel LaMonica. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to share a powerful birth testimony that Rachel had with her son, Kingston. But first, you had 3 pain-free births. So when I met you, you already had 2 children that were pain-free births. Can you tell me a little bit about those?
Yeah, definitely. I have a daughter who's 9 and a son who's 7. And back when I was pregnant with my daughter, my husband and I were talking, and we were just processing what birth would be like, and we started getting into this role of, if Jesus died on the cross and the curse is broken, well, that includes the curse on women for painful childbirth, and it's not right. I shouldn't have to experience that. And I was all about any breakthrough I could get from that, because I wanted the best birth and best labor I could have, because obviously people tell you horror stories when
all
you're
their
pregnant.
horror stories.
So scary. And so we just started believing for it and praying for it.
And had you read Supernatural Childbirth? No? Did you know anyone that had a pain-free birth?
I don't think so. I can't remember any stories that I had heard. I knew it was possible, but nothing really close to home for reference.
So you two just basically decided, we shouldn't have to experience this, and we're going to believe for it.
Right.
I love that. That's so Rachel and Will, if you know them. They're like, this is in the glory. Let's do it.
So we completely believed for that. And I actually remember one night we had a friend who we started having the same conversation, and he got on our side and he's like, that's right, you should have a pain-free birth, God broke the curse. And so he actually prayed over me, and I really believe that had something to do with it manifesting. And then with my son, I had already experienced it once, so I completely believed for it a second time. And with him, it was a lot more peaceful, because I was a lot more engaged with it, and I knew I had belief for it.
Yeah, you had done this before.
Right, and so with both of them, they were born in under 2 hours.
Wow.
And completely pain-free, and they were great experiences.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love
those
to
are
think
really
about.
so 2 hours. You mean from the first contraction, or active labor?
Well, with both of them, my water broke as the first sign of labor. So from my water breaking to them coming out, it was under 2 hours.
Wow.
Cadence was an hour and a half. My son was under 2 hours. And with both of them, I had a few contractions before, but it wasn't actual labor.
Was that overwhelming and intense? Because
yes.
It sounds like it would be.
It was. Well, with Cadence, it was so intense that it was coming. My contractions were coming so fast. They weren't painful, but they were really intense. And I didn't know, it was my first labor, so I didn't know what was happening to me. And I actually called the doctor to give me an epidural, maybe, because it was happening the contractions were happening so close together, and everyone had told me this is gonna last 8 to 20 hours as your first labor. And so I didn't know, I thought it was gonna get worse. I thought this must be terrible when you actually reach hour 20.
What could hour 20 be?
Because it's already, really happening fast. And so they came to check me, and I'm thinking that I still have this long stretch to go, and they tell me, you're 9 centimeters already.
What?
It's too late to get an epidural. You're gonna have the baby. And then at that point, I was like, oh, praise the Lord. This is fine, because at that point, it was almost over. So now it's good.
Right.
No, it was a good
the fear
labor.
goes.
Yeah.
Wow. How would you describe the pain, or lack of pain, I should say?
I would say that it was an intense pressure, but it wouldn't be the type of pain that, it's not like when someone hits you and it hurts really bad, or if something's actually broken in your body and it's scary. This was the type.
So you could feel everything. I
could feel everything, but it was just pressure. That's how I would describe it.
Really, really intense pressure.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then with your son, you were more peaceful, because you felt like, okay, I've done this before, and his birth was always also very short. Yeah,
with him, I did have some contractions a few weeks prior to going into labor. And I felt like with those contractions, that with his pregnancy, I did find some of the books, The Supernatural Childbirth, and I started reading some stories and learning about how to do it. With Cadence, it just kind of happened to me and I figured it out. But with him, I wanted to know how to do it. Why did it work like that? And I learned with those contractions that I got to push into it instead of pull away from it. And when I did that, it actually sped up what my body was doing.
Wow, even faster than the first time.
Yeah. And so when I did go into labor with him, I actually remember pushing into every contraction I had with him. And I had so few contractions because I think that they were so efficient.
Wow.
I didn't have that many because I was really, really engaging with what was happening. And the nurses, I just remember them actually sitting back and looking at me and just not knowing what to say because they told me this is really unusual. This is really not a normal labor. And it was really peaceful, and he came out and it was
amazing.
Beautiful.
Okay, so let's talk about Kingstons Birth. You had moved to Rochester, and I got to know you guys then, and you decided to hire me as your doula, so I got to experience this beautiful birth, and it's such an honor. I remember talking with you in a prenatal appointment and asking you like what some of your fears were, what you were processing, because so much of birth has to do with those internal feelings that your emotions, your hormones, all that affects labor, and oftentimes we don't ask women that. So I remember talking to you, and what were you guys working through at that time?
Yeah, I was really thankful to have you as a doula because I was going through a lot actually with this labor. I had been through many life changes. We were going through a transition of almost everything you can go through transition in. We felt like God had called us to move out here to New York. So we had just gone through selling everything and basically taking only what we could fit in our suitcases and moving cross country.
With your 2 kids?
With our 2 kids.
Wow.
And with no job secured.
You didn't know anybody here. It was just the word of the Lord that said move to Rochester, New York.
He confirmed it so clearly that it was to the point that we knew we were supposed to be out here. Otherwise, there's no way I would do something like that. No way I would do something that crazy. So we had just gotten through a major transition, a move. And as soon as we moved out here, we had another surprise, which was getting pregnant.
As if you weren't having enough transition.
Yes. It was like God was like, you need one more life change. One more
Why not
surprise.
just do it all at once?
Yeah, get it all over with.
So you found out you were pregnant, and you didn't even. Where were you living at the time?
People had graciously opened up their home when we got out here. We stayed at a hotel for a few nights on and off. We had been in some hotels, and then some people had opened their home up here for us, which was
so you had
incredible.
No home, no job
Right.
security. You're living in people's homes. You got to know our church family, but all these relationships are brand new, so everything's in upheaval. That must have been pretty unsettling as a mom and a wife, and now finding out you're pregnant. Can you guys imagine trying to nest in that situation? I don't even know what that looks like. Where do you nest?
It was hard. It was definitely hard.
Because you need, women, we need that security. We need that certainty. And man, that is what a test of faith that must have been.
It was definitely a test of faith. Before I actually knew I was pregnant, I was like, where's all my peace? I don't know why I don't know why I'm crying at random times of the day. I don't know why things are bothering me. I feel like I should be more okay. And then I found out I was pregnant. That's why the garbage disposal made me cry the other day. That's why I couldn't handle that situation as well as I would normally. Yes. So, yes, it was definitely challenging, especially when I got to the nesting stage. Not having a house full of furniture.
So where were you living then?
Well, my husband got a job, and then we did get into an apartment, but I was sleeping on an air mattress for most of my pregnancy.
I remember I gave you a mattress. I said no pregnant woman should be sleeping on an air mattress. That's just not okay.
That's right. She's the real deal doula. She'll even give you a mattress if you don't have one.
I said that is just an injustice.
Yes, that's right. I remember that. Yeah, that was definitely a challenge. I mean, it even made me worried for the baby. If his development, is he developing okay? Am I sitting on the right kind of furniture?
Oh,
is he okay?
your mama heart. So but God gave you a prophetic word in that time. What did he say to you?
That's right. I was really worried that we wouldn't have furniture by the time the baby was born, because that was really hard to fathom, is giving birth to a baby and bringing him into this empty home that didn't feel like a safe place for a baby. And I felt like God told me, by the time the baby's born, you're going to have furniture.
Wow.
And at that point, I didn't know exactly how that was going to be possible. But he came through. We did have furniture in time for the baby.
God takes care of all our needs.
Yes.
So what happened the night before Kingston was born?
Okay. So the day before Kingston was born, I woke up and I felt like God had told me I needed laughter.
Wow.
I just had this sense, like, you need to laugh today. You've been a little too serious and it's not helping anything out. I think I was 3 days past due. And so that night happened to be girls' night.
We had girls' night out.
Yes.
Now,
Which
women,
was needed.
if your doctor is talking induction and you're overdue, and of course you're probably getting stressed out and you've got fight or flight hormones going through your body's tense, that's the last thing you need to hear is, yeah, I gotta go in for an induction. That's probably gonna make you not go into labor even more. But what I would recommend is having an oxytocin party. This is the best natural induction you can imagine. Even before all the castor oil and the walks and the sex, and that stuff is great, but you're still doing it out of a striving and a pressure and a trying. And most of the time it doesn't work anyway because you're holding that tension and fear. You're trying to make labor happen, and let's face it, you can't make labor happen, right? No. But get a bunch of girls together, have a girls' night out, go see a fun movie, laugh, hug, and just be women. You're all going to release oxytocin from being together, and that oxytocin actually stimulates your labor to begin. So what happened for you?
Yes, so that's exactly what happened.
I told the story on you.
I showed up to girls' night, and somehow one of our friends, like, something came upon her and she just couldn't stop telling funny stories, Jen. And I mean, I was cracking up. I was laughing.
You were crying, I think.
I was crying. I was laughing so hard. It was awesome. It was nonstop the whole night. And it was exactly what I needed, because at 7 a.m. the next morning, I woke up. I had 2 dreams right before I woke up, where I had one dream where my water broke and I was going to the hospital, and then I kind of woke up and then I went back into sleep, and I had another dream where my water broke, and then I woke up and my water actually broke.
Oh, wow.
So
it
was really a quick response right after girls' night. I was like ready to go.
Well, you're like, well, that was effective.
Yes. I highly recommend girls' night if you are wanting to go into labor.
Yes, amen. So what happened next? Your water breaks at 7 a.m.
Yeah. So, and then I call you in the hospital. First of all, I call the midwife, and I'm like, I have fast labors.
Right.
My water just broke.
We were concerned we would even make it to the hospital in time, that I would even get there in time, because I'm thinking 2 hours, that's not a lot of time, right? So right. I'm like checking my phone every night, making sure I'm not missing her call.
Yeah, I was worried about the same thing. And then I called you, and we had stayed up so late the night before, but I called you early anyways, and I'm like, I'm not going into labor. Right. We gotta get to the hospital. Because it's like, you call me
at the first sign, the first contraction. So we rush to the hospital, and we get there, and you're doing great. You're having contractions, but it doesn't seem like it's gonna happen imminently. And I remember we kept laughing about the night before. Yes. We kept telling stories and we kept joking about all these stories and laughter. And I have some pictures of you like in the middle of a contraction or sitting in your bed just laughing with like joy on your face.
That's right. It rolled right over into the next morning.
Into your labor.
Right, which was really neat for me, because with my first labor, I experienced like the breakthrough, of having pain-free. And then with the second, I really had a lot of peace. And this time, one of my goals was I want to experience joy.
Wow.
And I didn't even make that connection until later on in the labor. That, oh my gosh, this is what is happening.
You prayed for.
Yeah, we were laughing and enjoying. I was actually enjoying being in labor.
That's great. And so then like a few hours go by and it goes to like, it's lunchtime now, like 7, 8, we get there, you know, probably 8 or 9 a.m. and then lunchtime and the baby hasn't come yet. And you're starting to like doubt yourself thinking by now I've had my other 2 babies and you're like, what's wrong? What's going on? And you ask for some time alone. And so you felt like I just need to process. So Will and I go, you know, to get some lunch. And what happened while you were processing?
Right. So after 2 hours passed, I felt like I was in Uncharted Territory a little bit. I've never been in labor for this long, and I didn't really know what was different. If something felt different, and I wasn't sure if it was that we were talking and that I wasn't focused on the fact that I was having a baby. And so I wanted some alone time. I needed to kind of connect with what was happening. And so I remember I just went in the bathroom and sat on the side of the tub, and I was thinking, okay, how do I engage with the fact that I'm in labor? How do I connect here? Because with my other 2 labors, I felt really, really instinctual. And this time I felt like I couldn't get there, and I didn't know why.
Interesting.
And so I was doing a lot of imagining myself having the baby, and I was trying to talk to the baby, and I was trying to speak to my body and tell my body to go into labor, and it was kind of helping, but it just honestly it felt like something was stuck.
So we came back in the room
Right.
after a time, and you asked us to pray for you, and that was really powerful. Like I remember, like at first I remember just saying like I feel like there's like medically there's nothing wrong, like, but then Will started praying and declaring things over this baby, and he said at one point, "I just declare you're a real boy."
Yeah.
And instantly I thought, oh my gosh, because you had a dream the night before. Tell us about that dream, or a few days before.
Yeah, I had a dream where I gave birth to him, and he was a doll, and he was just this, it wasn't a real baby, it was a doll, and it really kind of haunted me. It scared me. I didn't know what that meant. All the transition that we had been through had really made me feel like it wasn't a real pregnancy.
Yeah.
I couldn't connect with the fact that I was actually going to have the baby. Even though I wanted him, I was really excited about him. It was just something was not, I had just been through a lot that season. And I also had fears that the way that I had just like some of this, like just natural stress and the way that we had been living had affected the baby, and I think that I was afraid of that. So that disconnected me. And so once we prayed, that was such a massive, massive shift for me, because I was able, I don't know exactly, something just clicked into gear. And that declaration, "You're a real boy," I think that it was what needed to be said over him. And maybe even something shifted for him. But my body immediately kicked into gear once we started declaring that, and once we finished praying, it was immediate. You couldn't deny that it was a prayer that shifted
the very
something.
next contraction was way different than any other contraction before.
Yes.
In fact, at that same time, there was a shift change with the nurses, and the nurse previously had, given her notes to the new nurse and saying, okay, she's about here. It'll probably be, several more hours. She's, in, probably early labor or so. And then the new nurse comes in right after we prayed and sees Rachel going through these intense contractions. And you can tell the nurse is like, oh, that's not at all what okay, you're going to have this baby soon. And she can tell, like, this is not the story they told me.
Yeah, it was like a different labor all of a sudden. My body really engaged, and that's when I started to feel the instincts. And I also got a picture while we were praying of how I was supposed to give birth.
Really?
Which was not in my plan at all. I pictured myself actually like, in an upright position, kind of like squatting to give birth, and I knew I had to give birth to him that way. And that wasn't something I wanted to do going into labor or even thought about, but I knew like that is what I had to do to get him out.
Wow, so your instincts immediately kicked in. And so you saw yourself in an upright position, and you said, you got to lift the head of the bed up this way. You tell us what needs to happen, and her husband and I and the nurse were all scrambling like, okay, get the bed up. Get the bed up. And so she climbs on the bed. It's like you knew exactly what you needed to do.
Right. They even had a bar for that position, but I'm like, nope, I don't want the bar. I need to do it this way.
Yeah. So describe that. You were hanging over the back of the bed, like kneeling on the bed. The head of the bed was lifted like upright, straight up and down, and you were leaning over the head. And those contractions were hitting you. You would kind of sit up a little bit and you would groan a little bit through them, but it was like this intense, I just remember it was like this intense power and concentration, but your eyes were closed the whole time, and you were like, you'd have the contraction, but you wouldn't make much noise. It's like little grunts, and then it would fade away and you'd like sit back on your legs, but you kind of stayed there until the baby was born. What did that feel like on the inside?
Yeah, it felt, I mean, I was really quiet on the outside, but on the inside there was a lot happening. It felt like every time a contraction came, it was really intense. I remember telling you it was almost like I was leaving the room, because it got really, like everything just disappeared from around me. All I could do was focus on what was happening inside. And it was almost like things got blacker. Like even though I was closing my eyes, it was almost like I was leaving reality, like this realm, and going somewhere else, like inside. And I pulled inside, and I had to focus everything I was on the fact that he was coming out, and just connect with that. And it was very intense. And every time a contraction happened, that's what I felt. It was this inward focus that I had to engage with.
Wow. I remember at one point someone asked you, like, are you in pain? Are you okay? And you said, stop talking.
Yeah, I think it was Will, because I think he wanted to make sure I was still having a pain-free birth. And he was just checking, so I'm like in the middle of a contraction. He's like, does it hurt at all? Is there any pain there at all? And I'm like, stop.
You're like, I'm having an altered state of consciousness.
Yes, don't mess up my consciousness right now.
So true. Don't disturb the laboring woman.
Yeah, that was so
wow. Funny. So that it's so powerful. You said, like, I remember, I think you felt like sinking into it, like we talked about, and just like you're just going deeper into this other state. How did it feel as Kingston was like moving down your birth canal, like, and coming out? Because it seemed like, so we prayed, and instantly your labor shifts, your instincts kick in, you know exactly what position you need to get in, and like your normal birth pattern takes over of like this quick, fast labor. And so you're contracting, you're having these intense surges, you're going into like this other dimension. What other feelings did you have as Kingston was coming out?
So with the intense contractions, I was really inward and focused, and then it kind of switched to him coming more down the birth canal. And I remember kind of this pause that I felt where I kind of got scared, and it was like, oh, there's no going back. Like he has to come out, and I have to go through this. And I just got scared for a second. And I think around that time was when I remember I was going through a contraction, and you told me to remember to sink into it. And that just really helped me remember to push into the contractions, because that's the only way through it, is to, engage with it and get through the labor and get through pushing him out. And I started to just feel, like I told you, him as a person.
Wow.
When I was feeling him coming through the birth canal, I could actually sense that he was this little force to be reckoned with. I felt that he was like a really intense person and really powerful, and it was a really unique experience to feel that.
Wow.
Because it was and then I really remember focusing my energy on letting my body do the work. And I had remembered that you said not to push before you're ready and let your body do most of that. And so I kind of just waited and I let him kind of come down, and every time the contractions would happen, it was more of an inward focus and strength that I focused on instead of a physical pushing. And then when he got down farther, then there was nothing I could do to help but push, because my body was telling me that's what you have to do.
Yeah. Like you can't not push at that point.
Right. But I didn't push until that point.
And you were pushing for only maybe 20 minutes, I think, when we looked at the clock. So when he came out, what happened?
So he started to, well, let me see here. He's coming down. It was really intense. I mean, he was my biggest baby, and it felt like it. And I really had to really engage with pushing him out. I feel like, giving birth it's even though it's pain-free, it's the hardest work you'll ever do. And the the most intense experience. And I think that when I was getting close to him coming out, I just embraced that. This is my third kid. This might be the last time I get to experience this moment.
Wow.
And I feel like when you have a baby, it's the most empowering feeling that you're ever gonna feel as a woman. It is like there's no other accomplishment that you can have that makes you feel like that. And so I embraced that. And even though it was a lot, I tried to connect with the beauty of the moment in that last few minutes. And then he did start to crown, and I remember just all this joy coming through my body, just knowing that I was so close to meeting this little baby who had been really a mystery to me. I didn't know what he was going to be like, and it was really exciting to have a third kid. And I just knew I was so close to this little baby, this little mystery being revealed, and I was like, that little dose of joy from knowing that he was so close gave me a burst of energy, and then it came right out after that.
Wow. And they put him on your chest. You must have sat back and breastfed.
Right. She had to maneuver it a little bit. She was trying to explain to me, she's like, okay, you're in kind of a funny position, so we're gonna have to kind of hand him a football under you, and then you're gonna have to flip over. But it all worked out.
It worked out. And your nurses were amazing. They just kind of watched you do this. Yes. Everyone in the room it was just this still silence and awe. And it was no one wanted to interrupt, except for that one time Will interrupted. But it was so awe and reverence, and we just could see how much work it was, how concentrated you were, and I mean, it was just such a beautiful, beautiful birth. I remembered one other thing I wanted to ask you when we were having our prenatal appointment, and I asked you, we prayed over your baby, and this is at that time when you were feeling like you weren't bonding or connecting with your baby. And so I led you in a prayer of repenting to Kingston,
right,
and just saying, I'm sorry for not being able to bond with you, and will you forgive me? And then I said, ask him if he has anything to say to you. And what happened? Yes. What did you hear? Do you remember that?
I do remember that. And that was so interesting to me when you said that, because I was really aware of talking to your baby, but not hearing from your baby. And when you said that, it was, oh my gosh, this light bulb went on, and I tried to engage and listen. And I really felt him talk to me. I mean, it was I could feel his spirit, and that was the first time, because I had been disconnected from the fact that I was pregnant, and I felt really guilty about that. And it was the first time that I felt breakthrough, and I felt his spirit, and I felt him say, I need you, mommy. Aww. And I just, tears came to my eyes, and it was so meaningful. I'll never forget that.
Wow. I so believe that there's this spiritual connection between a mom and a baby, and even that we have this telepathic ability to communicate and speak to our babies, and not just communicate to them, but hear what they're saying. And sometimes we just don't know that that's possible, but I feel they really do speak to us. There's a knowing in our spirits that yeah, this baby just said, I need you, mommy, or yeah, I'm really happy, or I'm really scared, or you know, like these simple, beautiful messages, there's this connection. And when we engage it, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you. And thank you for being my doula. It
was an honor.
An amazing experience.